How you doing, people? This is the Rubin Report. I'm the guy who invented Black Friday, Dave Rubin, and we have a Veterans Day, an old-timers edition of the Rubin Report for you. Jimmy Dore and Ben Mankiewicz. The crowd goes wild.
Is this show supposed to appeal to younger people? Is that the idea?
We have a very young demo. I wanted to bring you guys in to teach the young people how it used to be in the good old days.
Yeah. I wasn't around in the good old days, though. I was out telling jokes, telling dick jokes and banging waitresses in fucking Omaha. But now I'm
weren't
here.
the good old days?
Those sound. I was going to say those sound like pretty good.
Oh, those
old.
were good old days for me.
Yeah, not for the waitresses.
Yeah.
I think they had a thrill too.
Well, we'll see. Anywho, all right.
Couple of them for
Couple
sure.
of them dug it? All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with Ferguson. Obviously, Officer Darren Wilson was not indicted by the grand jury in the murder or the shooting death of Michael Brown.
What?
Yeah, shocking, right? You're totally shocked. We've got some video to show you what's happened basically since then, and then we'll rewind after that.
This is what community looks like.
You are in the streets, blocking the roadway. You are unlawfully assembled. You need to disperse immediately or you will be subject to arrest. Do it now.
The McDonald's, the window is broken into again. We saw a couple other stores broken into and looted.
Tear gas has been thrown, water bottles we witnessed being thrown at police.
Tear gas. Tear gas. This tear gas just dropped right near us. It's going to get very bad here if we don't have masks. Yeah, so they're throwing it back. There are a lot of beanbags being shown at tear gas.
What you're looking at is the aftermath of the grand jury deciding not to indict Officer Wilson.
That's one police cruiser that is fully engulfed right now. And then if you just turn to your right, our photographer, Stike DeMoss, is going to get you the other cruiser. That one is almost finished burning.
Okay, so that was obviously a lot of the fallout the evening of the decision. Now, I want to point out here, because I think this is being lost, that what happened here was that the grand jury decided to not send this to trial. This was not the trial itself.
Right.
I think it's important to say that because no one's really saying that on the news. This thing didn't even get to trial. There's a dead person and somehow it didn't get to trial.
An unarmed dead person.
Yeah, how many people, unarmed dead person?
Shot by at least 35 feet away.
Yeah.
Unarmed, 35 feet away, shot dead with 6 bullets, 12 of them, and 6 of them missed him.
And the grand jury said that's not enough evidence just to get this trial.
Meanwhile, there's a black cop in St. Louis County who is being charged with felony prosecution by that same prosecutor because he hit somebody in the hand and broke 3 of their fingers. He's being prosecuted, no grand jury. He's just going to prosecute him for felony.
Jimmy, are you implying there's some sort of racial element to this?
I think I am implying that prosecutors are racist, corrupt, transparently corrupt. And so is the police chief, so is Darren Wilson, so is that whole police department. My question is, when you see an out-of-control police department like this, they're tear gassing the news reporters again.
Right, okay,
so when does the feds come in and go, you guys aren't a police force anymore. You all have to go home.
All right, so we'll get to the reaction in a second, but just the first part, that this was the grand jury decision, not even trial. How many people do you think even understand that? Even the people that are out there at night that are upset, how many people actually get what really just transpired?
I think they get, I'm going to guess, in general, no one understands the grand jury process. It's a confusing process. It's for people who haven't.
Even the prosecutor doesn't understand.
He doesn't even understand.
He revealed yesterday that he has no idea how the grand jury system works, and he said it on live TV.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The fact is, there's no, they could reconvene another grand jury and prosecute him. They could try it 10 times, or he could just skip
I didn't know that. So there isn't anything like double jeopardy when it comes to the grand jury?
He hasn't been charged.
No, he hasn't been charged.
Right.
Double jeopardy is for you're charged with a crime.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly unlikely because who would do that? But that said, it could happen, and if this guy just got reelected, he was unopposed. Robert McCullough for another term as county prosecutor.
Why would you oppose him?
Yeah, who could? Yeah, what do you run on? There's nothing you can grab onto. But theoretically, like if he were recalled, which is available to Missouri voters, then another prosecutor could come in and either convene a different grand jury, present the case differently, or just charge him outright based on the evidence they have. And I think based on what you saw in the grand jury testimony, you can see where a conviction on Darren Wilson would be difficult. right? That's clear.
A conviction in the trial, which it didn't
like
get to.
If he were
Right.
tried,
Yes.
because there are witnesses who give conflicting reports,
Yeah.
and a jury would hear those.
That happens in every case. So it would, you know,
No, it does.
and for
That's-
him
that-
saying because it might be difficult to prosecute it, he's not going to.
No,
That
but
every
let
case.
me make the whole point, because I'm not saying
I want to
obviously.
cut you off.
obviously, he should have gone to trial because there's unquestionably enough there, and the grand jury theoretically shouldn't even have heard the people who the defense would have eventually called. But the fact is the defense would have eventually called them, and so you can see where, well, it might have been reasonable doubt, and you might have had a tough time getting 12 jurors. But the fact of the matter is, nobody even, the defense witnesses, right, the witnesses who spoke on Darren Wilson's behalf and whose now testimony we've been able to read, we don't know who they are, but it's no one cross-examined them.
Right.
So, which would, you know, and you were like, so when he appeared to be reaching, might that be the kind of thing that somebody would do after they'd been shot in the stomach? That might have been what he was doing with his hands? Is that
Right.
possible? And the guy would have said, well, yeah, probably. That's possible. I've never been shot in the stomach. So, but yeah, so I think they don't know. But what they do know, it doesn't matter whether they
doesn't
know the
matter.
specifics. They know that justice was not done. They know that this guy, not only is he allowed to walk free, he didn't even have to do anything to walk free. He didn't even have to hire Johnny Cochran and sell a story and win a case because he had a lot of money. The system didn't even try. They just let him go.
This is the type of case that Johnny Cochran literally would have come back from the dead to probably. Actually, he probably wouldn't have been huge on it. But it seems to me that everything here is wrong. Every level of everything. For example, they waited till nighttime to announce the decision, knowing that the people were going to be out there. They already gave the kids in school off on Monday and Tuesday. Wouldn't it be better to have the kids in school so that they don't have to be out on the streets? I mean, it just seems like every level of where the system could fail, it has failed so far.
And until I'm proven wrong, I say that half those fires, there was 13 fires, I'm going to say about half of them were insurance fires.
I had a friend that was saying the same thing.
And the other half were started by the cops.
Even though you have no evidence, but you're willing to.
Well, I don't have any evidence otherwise. I mean, it would be consistent that the criminal element in that community are the cops, the prosecutor, and the whole St. Louis cop community are racist and criminal. Right? It's every time they come on TV, they're revealing themselves to be criminals and corrupt transparently. I'm not reading into what they're doing. So it would be consistent that the murdering cops and the other prosecutors who cover for the murdering cops would also be arsonists. People go, you can't say that. It's consistent. It's not as big a crime to be an arsonist as a murderer.
So you think perhaps the cops are actually causing fires
Yes.
because then it makes the protesters look
It's
bad?
called a false flag operation. And yes, they did it in Mexico. They just did it with the protesters in Mexico. They started a building on fire and set and blame. So yes, no doubt. By the way, they're shooting tear gas, which is illegal internationally. You can't use tear gas on people in war. You can't use tear gas. Except we use it on our own citizens, those fucking pricks. And use it on our own goddamn citizens. Chemical weapons, left and right, and they're shooting tear gas. How do I know they didn't shoot a tear gas canister into a tire shop and start a fire that way? I bet they did, in fact.
So I'm with you on like 10% of that the fires seemed. I'm not going off the deep end with you, but the fires seemed odd that they were bursting all over the place. Just places were suddenly
And then they would
burning down.
there was one car on fire. We all saw the one car on fire. Then there was two cars on
Did
fire.
they show that
the
car
same,
on fire?
The same parking lot.
I didn't get a chance to look
the
at that.
same
Yeah, they
parking
showed
lot.
it.
And then they wouldn't put it out until all the cars caught on fire. Then they brought in the fire department.
Right, okay,
After
so-
they waited for it all to go up.
Ben, do you want to couch a little bit of what Jimmy's saying
I don't
there?
think the
into,
cops set fires, although the first time that you said that yesterday on the Young Turks, and I thought it sounded nuts, but amusing. And then, but now when you're like firing tear gas into the tire shop, that was the first time I was like, well, all right, okay, maybe.
You really don't think the cops would start fires to blame it on the crowd on purpose? Is that really crazy?
I think that those
That's consistent with their criminal behavior.
their criminal behavior is not necessary. They don't need their criminal behavior to be that insidious. They get to do it in the open. Like their criminal behavior is, we can discharge our weapon where we see fit, and then we stand by our guys and we don't properly investigate the case, and then the prosecutor presents a nonsense case to the grand jury, unlike he's ever done before, and we don't get a guy indicted. Like, it's no big deal. We don't have to set fires. Now, did they have a vested interest in sort of it looking like mayhem? You know, Chris Hayes on MSNBC kept pointing out there aren't that many people here. But theoretically, you would see someone at some point would see someone set a fire. These fires were not set in in parts of the town where nobody was. So theoretically, some people, protesters, saw it. If a cop was doing it, I mean, I guess he'd be undercover, but.
All right, I don't want to get too hung up on
But I'm saying a cop could easily tell a guy that's what they do all the time. They make him turn and give him information so that you go, hey, I won't prosecute you, or we're going to charge you for murder unless you go start this fire. They have 3 months to plan this.
I got it. Here's the thing. If that happened, that is an unbelievable story and a great story.
Unbelievable?
And no, I mean it's
What's more unbelievable?
Hold on. It's a fantastic story, and it's a story that journalists would be like, the cops said this is the greatest story I've ever written. It's a pretty big risk to be paying informants off to set fires and counting that those informants are not going to talk about it later.
But not to publicly go on camera and reveal that you're a corrupt, because that's what that prosecutor did. And he said, I'm not going to prosecute this guy. In fact, I'm going to act as a defense attorney for the cop who murdered a black unarmed kid from 35 feet away.
But he doesn't have to answer to anybody for that. I mean, we both think this guy's corrupt and should never have been on the case. His father, of course, was a police officer, killed in the line of duty by a black suspect with a gun, by a black killer with a gun. So,
and what's the prosecutor's? What is his record on prosecuting cops who shoot unarmed men?
It's pretty solid. He's 0 for 5.
0 for 5.
He's 0 for 5.
He's a crook.
All right. Well, I would basically say that claims like that, you need some evidence behind it. But yes, it wouldn't. But yes, getting the evidence is hard because they're probably good at it. So I'm sort of with you. So just last thing on this, what do you think at this point? What do you think the protesters want? What do they gain at this point by now, blocking roads and the whatever looting is going on and all that? What is their end game at this point, or is it just to keep the story going?
My question is, so we just get to have a completely corrupt police, we completely corrupt county attorney who's not going to prosecute murdering cops. So when does the federal government step in and do something? When does he nationalize the National Guard instead of letting the fucking governor, who's also corrupt, who didn't replace this guy? And I'm not saying that he's a criminal. I'm saying he's a craven politician who wouldn't do the right thing. The right thing was to replace this prosecutor, and he didn't do it for political reasons. When do they nationalize the National Guard and say you're no longer a police department?
So answer that question. Bring us home. What does the government do now to just?
I expect a little more from a chief executive named Nixon, right? Okay. I don't know. The federal government's investigation is continuing. There's 2 investigations essentially that they're looking at, 2 options, both the Ferguson Police Department in general.
But I mean, and the immediacy. What do they do in these next couple days where it's still going on there, and now we're seeing it spread? What do you think they can do to kind of temper it?
They can appoint another prosecutor. The governor can do whatever he wants. They still can prosecute this guy.
Right, but that's the stuff that's weeks away or months away or whatever. You know what I mean? That's not happening tomorrow. He's not suddenly replacing him tomorrow and reconvening.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know whether the pressure would be so intense that it might cause something like that to happen. Legal experts seem to say that's incredibly unlikely.
Yeah.
Incredibly unlikely. It's not, I don't know, unprecedented. It's legal. You could certainly do it. He could face civil rights charges. Those are really tough to pull since the middle of the century because you have to show intent, and not just intent to kill, but you have to show intent to deprive someone of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as opposed to what the obvious case for every cop who kills somebody in the line of duty is I felt threatened for my life. With the Klan members in 1964 in Philadelphia, Mississippi, the famous Mississippi Burning, the movie, that those cops were prosecuted under civil rights violations because they were in the Klan. Right, and it made it a little easier. But ever since that law was written in Reconstruction in like 1870, and it didn't have the intent part. The intent part got added, and that intent has been interpreted now to show that they have to directly show, and it's hard to show that Darren Wilson is a racist. So that's why that's unlikely, but it's not impossible. I mean, I read a piece in Slate today where the headline was the feds should charge Darren Wilson with civil rights murder, but they probably can't, and here's why.
Yeah. All right, well, I think if we've proven anything, it's that this case isn't going anywhere, and obviously we will keep talking about it. But let's move on to Jimmy's favorite person. Chuck Todd was on Larry King's Politicking, and my buddy Larry King asked him some interesting questions, and Chuck had this to say, which I thought was kind of insightful.
What about big money in all of this? The Supreme Court decision allowing anything goes, literally. Didn't that have a great effect on all of this?
Well, I think it's all having a cumulative impact. And here's the unintended consequence. So you have all this money. If you're a candidate, Larry, and you want to run for office, you've got to suddenly not just see if you've got enough friends to write you checks that'll add up to a couple $1 million. You have to find out if you have a sugar daddy or sugar mommy that can write you a check for $1 billion or knows people that can accumulate $1 billion. Oh, by the way, what you want to run on, you may not be able to run on because some outside group may decide they're going to make your campaign about issue X, even if you want to talk about issue Y. I think this whole process, it's the money, it's media, social media, opposition research, the destructive nature of American discourse, is having an accumulating effect that drives good people from running for office. And I think we're having a collective, I sort of joke that I feel like the collective IQ of Congress goes down every 2 years because smart people look at it and say, why do I want to do this?
Wow, I actually am feeling a little vindicated. Money, media, social media, it's all part of the problem. Holy cow, this is what we say every day, right? This is what we do all the time, and we're outside of the system, so we can be honest about it. Is it a little too late for Chuck Todd to join the truth train?
Chuck Todd is part of the problem. I mean, who the fuck is he kidding? Are you kidding? That guy couldn't be a bigger corporatist. I watch his show. I've lost weight from throwing up. It's unbelievable. I mean, for him to say, and then for him to kind of mix everything together like he just did, also doing a disservice to the issue. Twitter is not as big a problem as Sheldon Adelson.
Right.
That is not the biggest problem.
Right.
The Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, the fact that our elections have been hijacked by money is not a big a deal as Joey Jagoff on Twitter.
Right, and for him to say the money thing, which obviously we talk about all the time, but then for the next word to be media, when he's in the media, which is NBC owned by GE, et cetera.
But he doesn't say corporate media or why it's the media or what's wrong with the media. He just says the media.
Yeah.
Right?
Ben, you've been doing this longer than we have. Are you feeling?
Jimmy's hatred for Chuck Todd is much stronger than mine. Mine will grow. He's so much better, it would appear to me, than David Gregory. Yeah. No, he's definitely better. You're just wrong. Sometimes you're just wrong.
No, I watch the show. You don't.
I got it, but I see clips.
Do you watch the show?
I see clips.
Well,
I can't.
Okay, so I'm more informed than you, but you can have your opinion.
No, but first of all, being less informed has never stopped you from opening your mouth once in your entire life. So I'm certainly not going to back off at this point.
I am going to beat the fucking shit out of you.
That's what we want to see on Meet the Press.
It's the level of fucking discourse in this country.
That's the truth that Jamie Dore would bring to Meet the Press.
Look, I mean, you got I would take a win sometimes, and I think I agree with Dave. There's a pretty good thing of Chuck Todd. Larry King. What does Larry King look like in the morning? Before the makeup and it's like he would be unrecognizable.
I've had bagels with him in the morning out of makeup. He looks pretty good.
Is bagels code for something?
No, it's code for that was weird.
I think that's a good
weird.
look. You're right. He doesn't. But the fact is he doesn't say corporatist media. But when he says media, that's what that means to regular people. They don't think media means Twitter. They think media means NBC, CBS, ABC, CNN, and those shows. And it is. We are discouraged. And then to his bigger point, are smart people discouraged from running? Yeah, I think so. Sure. And what is clear, though, more so than smart people being discouraged from running, is dumb people are encouraged to run. And so it'd be nice if he finished the point, because where the Koch brothers and Sheldon Adelson win are when dumb people run. They haven't recruited one smart candidate to run anywhere.
Joni Ernst.
Right. I mean, and a little bit what you would like Chuck Todd to get to say is, man, the crop of Republican Senate candidates who won this year, they were better candidates than in 12. Or whatever the last year was, 12 or 10. There was no Todd Aiken. Mm-hmm. They didn't have guys there wasn't the guy wasn't Richard, Murdoch in Indiana. There weren't those guys. So they were more crafted in that sense, but they were craven and dim-witted and not big thinkers, and they're little tiny people. You'd like him to say that, because it's not like George Soros is going around the country spending money to recruit dumb progressives to run.
Right, so almost by default, won't the 2016 Republicans have to be better than last time? I mean, really, when you think of that collection with Michelle Bachmann and Rick Perry, who may run again, and 999, Herman Cain, I mean, when you think, it actually seems like an SNL parody who they put up last time. So I sort of feel like it has to be better this time.
You know
how can
what?
it be worse?
I'm gonna reserve my judgment because I expect them to surprise us.
Yeah.
I think they will be even worse somehow. I think it's gonna be Rand Paul, Chris Christie, right, and then Rick Perry just for kicks.
Yeah. Perry.
Yeah, and then Jeb Bush, who's not, who's a more serious person.
Sounding.
He's more serious sounding. He's a more serious
He's a
sounding.
Bush with glasses, which is
and I mean,
something.
and if he ends up being more like his father,
that's
then,
good.
Right. Then it's just more sort of like the Jeb Bush. If he's more like his dad, if it were Jeb Bush more like his dad against Hillary Clinton, then I would honestly, for the first time, buy into the argument of there's probably not a lot of huge difference there.
Oh, between Jeb Bush and Hillary, yeah, there wouldn't be much of a difference at all, I don't think.
Right, as opposed to whether it's Hillary against, whether it's Hillary
against Rand Paul,
and Rand Paul, or Chris Christie, or Rick Perry, or God forbid, Scott Walker, any of those guys. Then there is a dramatic enough difference. It's not the kind of difference where you're like, yay, Hillary, but there is a difference where you're like, oh shit.
All right, well, let's not go too deep the rabbit hole of 2016. But is it already too late to talk about money for 2016? Right, it is already, right? Hillary's been raising money for a year at least, or 2 years, I don't know, basically 5 years at this point. Like, nothing can change in terms of money for the next president, can it? Like, that system is already...
Doesn't seem like it. The only thing that can maybe change it, and Barack Obama, I thought he was gonna, but it turns out, was that if you say, I'm not, like, remember Jerry Brown when he ran a long time ago, he would give out an 800 number and say, I'm not taking any corporate money, I'm only taking money from people. That's what it's gonna take somebody to do that, which I thought Barack Obama was gonna do, but he didn't. So I think that's the only other way we can change it besides a constitutional amendment, or we get the Supreme Court changed, which it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Right. So the Supreme Court obviously to blame, right, with the money. There's no doubt about it. I don't think anyone really argues that. But is it also Obama's fault? Because remember in 2008 when he said, I'm not going to take super PAC money, and then McCain started doing it, and then Obama was like, well...
Did he actually say he wasn't going to take it?
I think he pretty much said it, but then was like, well, he's doing it, so I have to.
Yes, and thank God.
And then it makes him...
And thank God. We don't live in a world where you can do that. You can't do that. Now, what Jimmy's right about is that you never know if someone has the magnetism. What Jerry's a super interesting politician, but Jerry Brown did not have the magnetism to take that.
He's not like a transcendent.
If a guy who had the mass appeal that Barack Obama did, and then it turned out had a personality of some sort, those things came together, and that guy did something like that, well, then you never know. And don't sleep totally on, the progressives want Elizabeth Warren. I don't see it happening. It seems unlikely. I think she's too close to Hillary. But who knows? Maybe. If thousands of people demand that you run for president, it's very hard for a politician to not get caught up in that moment and go. Yeah. But don't totally sleep on Jim Webb, who was Reagan's Secretary of the Navy, or maybe Assistant Secretary of the Navy.
He's a Democrat.
And now then became a Democrat.
Didn't he just launch an exploratory committee this week?
He actually launched it some time ago. He got media coverage for it this week, which was a little weird.
Yeah.
But he's an interesting guy, and an interesting guy about war, and an interesting guy about financing, and he thinks that we should have hammered Wall Street and should have gone at So and he's a plain talker, and he wears cowboy boots, and he's got a long history of stuff that's gonna get him in trouble with women. But that said, but he's a Democrat, which means you get out of it a little easier.
All right, so last thought on this. Would it be hard for you guys to get excited over anybody? Because that's how I feel at this point, that no matter, I was so excited for Obama the first time. I voted for him twice, as I've said a gajillion times on the show. And now I'm just like so over it. When I hear him speak, I'm just like, whatever. I know, Ben, you're not as sour on him. But what would it take for you to really be excited about a candidate at this point?
I think if the Hispanic from Modern Family ran, I'd vote for her. I get excited. I get excited just thinking about it.
Vergara, Sophia.
Yeah, Sophia, whatever.
Yeah.
Woo! I watched an episode of that. I never saw it before. I was like, holy shit! I'm getting divorced.
You get the women vote. You get the Latino vote. That's pretty good. What would it take for you to actually get excited?
I love getting excited. I mean, I love this stuff. I don't, I love talking politics. I love playing politics. I like it when candidates play politics. I'm not disturbed by the process of the compromises that people make. We've always done that. Yeah. We've reached a point where the compromises to corporate America, to Wall Street, it's too extreme. So then it stopped being so much fun.
Right.
And there's nobody on the other side making a strong enough argument. So that's a problem. But I love the race, and I hope somebody beats Hillary. I do. I hope she's not the candidate.
I'm with you on that.
I mean, I hope a Democrat beats her and gets the nomination and wins the presidency, and it'll be interesting. And look, we're tipping. Like, we're still here. We're still over here on the right. But there are a lot of people who are like, why aren't we here? So maybe we've, at some point it moves, and there might be.
Can I just make one point about Barack Obama? And I certainly do come down hard on him. He has done a lot of good things. He's like a really good Republican. He really. I'm not saying that as a joke. He really is. But. What I look is, I guess what hurts me the most about Barack Obama is the missed opportunity. Yeah, totally. Because he did have that giant personality.
That's what I mean.
He could have changed things, and he could have been the guy to say no to big money and change things forever, but he did, and that's what I feel badly about.
That's what I mean. I don't know that we'll ever in our lifetimes have another guy that will excite everybody like that.
Never.
So the system should have changed more. But maybe I'm just a dreamer.
Let me just say two things. There were two guys that at least, and one in 1972 who got his ass kicked, George McGovern, who was a real, like, we can't be in Vietnam and we've got to take care of poor people and I don't know why these aren't our priorities and what the hell are we talking about, right? This is what we do in this country. And then whose legacy he was continuing, that guy was murdered in 1968. Yeah. So, and my father
Robert F. Kennedy.
And my father worked for both those guys. Yeah. And Bobby Kennedy was, like, that was a transformative candidate. That was a guy who got it. And maybe it was the murder of his brother that changed him, because he definitely changed politically. He was a tough anti-communist crusading son of a bitch for a long time. But he kept the son of a bitch part, and that's the part that would have stuck around, is that Bobby Kennedy was not interested if he had won and fought for the things he believed in. Having Republicans mad at him would not have bothered him. Not concerned.
Yeah. You know what John F. Kennedy said, sometimes it's better to judge a man not by the friends that he has made, but by the enemies he keeps.
Yeah, that's right. And I got no problem. A lot of people, you fight with these Republicans, you willingness to call Michelle Bachmann crazy and all her ilk, that makes me like you. Yeah. And I don't think that, and the only problem is the danger is a guy like Chuck Todd in that clip when he says the lousy nature of American discourse.
Yes.
Is that he can't count that,
that doesn't count equally.
Like, eventually, calling the crazy non-thinkers, it's not a dissolution of discourse. That's, in fact, at this point, an inflation of discourse.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of discourse, let's talk about MSNBC for a second, because I talk about all the time how all of the networks just hire ex-White House people. There is a gajillion people. MSNBC is doing a lot of it with David Axelrod and Michael Steele. They do it on both sides. Everybody does. CNN just hired Jay Carney, which I think is literally the worst thing in cable news, to hire the White House spokesman, the paid liar to the media, to now be part of the media. Not fair. Jimmy's with me on this one. But MSNBC did have a new hire this week. They hired White House Associate Communications Director. Her name is Rachel Rakusin, and she's going to be MSNBC's VP of Communications. And we've got a quote from MSNBC. Do you want that picture? But we'll give you the picture back after. According to MSNBC's press release, during her White House tenure, Rakusin played a key role in devising press strategies for the president's domestic events and major policy announcements, including the State of the Union address, climate action plan, the White House Working Families Summit, the economic agenda, and in responding to the situation in Ferguson and the Ebola crisis. Okay, so by all accounts, she's a pretty decent lady. I don't mean this personal to her in any way, but I am so sick of the people that their media is supposed to be guarding becoming part of the media. Jimmy, before you punch me, go.
Oh, you mean, so you're saying that it's just one big capitalist gangbang that's happening in our media right now? There's nobody really gives a fuck about informing the people. It's just what I can get for myself, and conventional wisdom gets spit out over and over and over. Nobody ever investigates, tells the truth. All opinions are equal. Nobody's crazy, exactly like what Ben was saying. Everything is equal. Everyone's opinion matters just as much. And we don't debunk bullshit anymore. We give it a platform and then we repeat it ourselves. That's the new media.
That is what I was saying, and you said it a lot more effectively. Ben?
I don't have any problem with this because but I mean, this is
going to end with you two arm wrestling. That's how I want
this
episode
but who gives a shit whether NBC, first of all, MSNBC doesn't really do journalism. Like, they're closer, and if you want to watch mostly non-crazy people talk as opposed to pretty crazy people. I would choose them, I guess, but they're not breaking stories, right? They don't have investigative reporters.
Right.
And so what they have done is a reasonable decision of hiring somebody who has had really high. She's going to coordinate press coverage. I could care less who MSNBC hires to
But
coordinate
you don't
press
think
coverage.
there's generally a problem with
Yeah,
having an
there's generally
analyst?
a problem. I do not think this is an example of it, but I think generally there's a problem.
Okay, so when a guy like David Axelrod comes on MSNBC, who was Obama's campaign manager, I'm pretty sure we know what he's going to say.
Sure,
Michael Steele, he was the RNC, the head of the RNC. He's on there. And by the way, they all do this. Obviously, Newt Gingrich is on CNN, and
Yeah, both sides. This is an actual
everybody
both
does
sides
it.
do it. This is one of the few times where both sides actually do it.
Yeah.
Both sides do it.
But it doesn't matter. Like, those guys aren't brought in to break stories. They're literally brought in to be talking heads. So the issue is, because the sort of the discourse in this country is framed by the cable networks and what they're talking about, and having Newt Gingrich and Michael Steele debate Jay Carney and David Axelrod, it doesn't move the ball downfield any.
Well, that's
so
what-
so
that's
I mean,
what I
to
mean.
that extent, I agree, except none of those shows, the 24-hour news cycle, all they do is talk.
Yeah.
They don't break any stories. Where it would matter, I suppose, and where there might be an objection, is if a guy came from not working in media. I don't know what Jay Carney's history was prior.
I think he was a reporter before that.
Well, then he might be a bad example. But if David Axelrod came in and then he became the editorial editor of the Washington Post, well, then you Republicans would certainly complain, and you might have a sense that, hey, because this is a guy who couldn't be more sort of mainstream Washington. That's who you don't want. That he's on MSNBC is indifferent to me. And Rachel Rakusin, who was named one of the 50 hottest Washington workers.
Yeah, now you can put the picture back up of her. We promised.
Like, I mean, I don't bring it up. She was already in a magazine as being officially declared attractive, and she's lovely.
Yeah.
Wow, she is lovely.
Now, Jimmy, I know the commenters, and they're going to say, but
I
you
like to show my
guys,
cock, you said.
you can make that a joke of almost anything at this point. I know the commenters, they're going to say, well, you guys are just talking, so what's the difference between you guys and MSNBC? I know you have a good answer for that.
The difference between us and MSNBC is that we have integrity, and that we don't have corporate overlords telling us what to say. Cenk has already told story about how he one time he was doing a story that had a sponsor's name in it. They made him take it out. So we don't have that here. So that's why people come to the internet, is because I can say stuff like I say, and you're never going to get this on corporate news media. You're going to get both sides do it. Everything's equal, repeating, talking. We debunk bullshit. We don't repeat it. That's the big difference.
So the real thing is what you were saying, that basically they bring on these people, so the argument basically is from like here to here, like Republicans, Democrats, here to here. But really the argument is a much bigger thing, but we never even get to those ancillary parts, right?
We don't get it. And TV news doesn't advance stories. They gave up on. They used to. There was a time when they
follow-ups.
did. But they don't get it. It's just arguing. You know, look, I've said this 1,000 times, but it's really one of my greatest points ever in the history of cable news. No one has ever said, not one time, wow, I didn't, Dave, I never thought about it that way. Like, those words have never been uttered.
Yeah, I say it on this show every week.
Jimmy, that's such a good point. I never thought about it that way. Thanks.
Okay.
Like that. What kind of like CNN would just it literally would never happen. All they do is they make their point and then they fake laugh. They're all friends.
Yeah.
Okay, Jimmy, you with your rants. We'll be right back after these words.
So I love this story. You guys might have seen this viral video already. Cut.com took 3 grandmothers who have never smoked weed. They handed them a bong, and let's take a look.
Yipes. We don't know what to do with that.
Are you comfortable, or do you want me to light it?
Okay, let's.
I mean, and then you would just inhale from the top,
Oh,
and
geez.
it's going to drag smoke into here.
Here we go. Stand by one.
So yeah, you can gently you can stop lighting it. You can let go of the lighter.
Now take a breath. Oh, maybe not. Smooth. Smooth.
Come on, make sure your head's on.
You need more. I need more. Oh, you need more.
And you don't. Yeah.
Put your whole face over that. Yes, there. Do it like you mean it. She meant it. Okay.
Yeah, I can feel some tingle in my brain.
I feel like I'm smiling.
Yeah.
when I do it, I really feel like the muscles here in my neck seem not as tight. And I see a lot of benefits for it. But, yeah.
I totally lost track of what you were talking about.
I know. And then sometimes I put
a little bit of tea, I think, kicked it up a notch.
You sure
The
that
tea.
was tea?
I think I really inhaled a lot.
Oh, you did?
But I do not feel as high as they look to me. I don't feel to me as high as they look to me.
Oh, brother.
Just
God, that's like that one down.
Just like being drunk, isn't it?
Yeah, I would do it again if I can get this bag of chips open. Yeah.
Okay, clearly, I really love this video. If you want to see the full thing, we've got the link in the description right down below. Jimmy, as our resident pot guy, our weed guy, our 420 expert, this is a beautiful thing. Isn't this sort of a better commercial for weed than almost anything else you've ever seen? Everyone loves grandmothers. They're having a great time. She says her neck pain immediately went away. They're laughing. They're being silly.
They said at one point, we didn't include it in there, they referred to Lindsay Lohan or Miley Cyrus's bleached asshole. Yeah.
It gets there because that's what weed takes you to.
Right.
Really,
they
like,
played
isn't
Jenga.
Yeah. Isn't this just a great? Yeah, they're eating Oreos and whatever. Isn't this just a great commercial?
Maybe that's what Don Lemon was smelling.
Don Lemon, the obvious smell of weed.
The obvious smell of weed. I don't know why those women aren't in jail. I think they're criminals. Shouldn't we lock them up? Because that's what our culture says right now, that we should lock those women up.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great point. That is a great commercial. But the only thing is about marijuana is you don't need commercials.
This is true. You
It kind
don't.
of sells itself.
Yeah. Do you think it's funny though that they gave them a bong to do this? Now,
Yes.
obviously, that looks. A bong looks the funniest, but you
I
really
don't
that's
smoke
like
out of a bong.
right. So when you take a bong hit, that's probably the equivalent. I mean, it depends, I guess, how much you do, but that's really the equivalent of smoking maybe half a joint.
Yeah,
They
it's a
probably
lot.
would have got stoned from a joint, right?
Yeah, definitely. They could have just taken a couple of one-hitters and they'd be
Well, they did a lot of different things. They smoked a joint.
Oh, did they smoke a joint?
Yeah,
also?
and then they did the vape pen.
Oh, did they?
They had them, and then they put it in the tea. Like they had them sort of do it different ways.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Weed. You don't partake, do you?
No, I have a little bit. I've gotten some from my friend James.
James Dore, this guy over here?
No, basically, I've had more weed associated with the TYT crew people than anybody else. Because I've smoked a little bit with another friend of ours who's been on this show, has been on many of the shows here. Mm-hmm. She makes no bones about her.
Her
smoking.
Yes.
And with her, I had my first. That was the first time I thought it was fun. I did it when I was 28. I've said before, just to try to get laid. And because the girl I wanted to sleep with was doing it, so I was like, yeah, but that did nothing. But then
You didn't get high?
But then I did it at 44, and then I have, and I did with you.
A lot of people say the first time they try it, they don't get high.
Yeah. So and it was like 3 times with that girl. It didn't really. I don't know. I probably didn't. I probably didn't inhale.
Yeah.
Not because I was protecting myself. I was either afraid to or didn't do it right or didn't know how. I also the first time, this time around, like whatever it was 3 years ago, I instantly threw up.
Really?
Like instantly, I threw up, and I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of her. So I, like the expression that is tired and no one wants to use. I threw up a little in my mouth. I threw up in my mouth, and then was like, I'll be right back. And I went to I stepped outside and spit out. It was disgusting.
Ben, we are not going to besmirch weed on this show.
And then, no. And then, so I thought, this is horrible. And then, I tried another one. And then, starting 17 minutes later, one of the most fun nights of my entire life.
Yeah,
again.
you laugh hysterically and that's it. So has the weed thing, to me the weed thing is like the gay marriage thing. It took people a long time to get there, but now it's just going to happen state by state, and everywhere it happens, people are going to go, oh, all hell didn't break loose, families didn't fall apart, maybe we can start decriminalizing it and stop putting people in jail for having weed, which is absurd. Do you think that's pretty much how it's going to go?
I hope that's how it goes. I mean, there's still a big push back against it. They just, in Florida, right, Sheldon Adelson spent $5 million to defeat the medical marijuana bill.
Somehow defeating it with 43% of the vote.
Yeah.
Somehow in Florida it needed 64 kind of.
That's democracy.
What am I missing with the people that vote against it for medical marijuana? That's the part that, yes, I'm obviously pro-weed, fine, but that's the part that I simply cannot understand. How can you tell someone that has cancer or that has AIDS or something how they can medicate themselves to feel better? I literally cannot understand the logic of that person.
We like authority, and so we like the fact that we are somehow these same people who were Sheldon Adelson, I guarantee you, has no stand against over-prescribing, serotonin-based drugs, right? He has no problem with how much Xanax somebody takes, right?
And the 4,000 fucking commercials that are on every day about that
and maybe
stuff.
he's invested in it. Maybe he has an economic interest, but somehow I don't think he does. But for clearly a lot of people who aren't, especially, we like authority. That's why we don't like to challenge any of this stuff. That's why this system that we have here, where you just hear a Democrat argue with a Republican, works, because it's a format that we're comfortable with. It doesn't feel radical. And the notion that, no, the only drugs that we're comfortable giving, even though they are clearly more addictive and more dangerous and mess with your brain more than weed, that they've been approved, they went through a process, our government doesn't lie to us, and the FDA looked at it and went through a long process, and now it sells it, and I gotta go to my doctor, and he's in a white coat, and he has to prescribe to me. That is a process I can live with, as opposed to this other thing, which may keep you off this more dangerous drug and may have the same positive effect. For some reason we're not comfortable. We love authority, we love listening to, it's why we love Mitt Romney, it's why we love millionaires, and it doesn't matter how much money they make, because if you have money, you seem like you're an authoritative figure, and we're comfortable with that.
So is that fundamentally the real, like, it's sort of the oxymoron of weed, kind of, that when all these commercials that we see all day long about, every pill, pick a pill, and it's vomiting, diarrhea, maybe suicide, you might punch your wife, sleepwalking, all kinds of crazy shit, restless legs, all that, and then they got another pill for your restless legs, all that. But weed has none of that. So shouldn't that be the thing that the weed people are really pushing? Not only can it help you medicinally, and forget the laughing and all that, but also you don't have all that 3 minutes of side effect stuff that they have to put on the tag of every commercial.
That's exactly the beauty. The side effects include general sense of well-being and sleepiness, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's no other side effect. By the way, I've been diagnosed with bronchitis about a week and a half ago, and I haven't smoked pot in a week and a half, and I'm going crazy. Nothing. I don't even notice. I didn't even notice that I'm like, oh my God, I haven't smoked pot in 5 days.
That's just because your weed reserves are pretty deep in you. No, but really, you're right. You're not cringe. You're not out there
Nothing
craving
different
it.
in my life. It hasn't affected me one bit. So that's the beauty of marijuana, and it just goes to show you that. By the way, the people who are against medical marijuana, it was been revealed. People like Patrick Kennedy. They work for organizations that are on a take from OxyContin, cotton manufacturers.
Yeah.
So always be suspect of someone who's against a cancer patient getting medicine.
Of course, also, let's not forget that Rush Limbaugh was addicted to OxyContin.
Yes.
Didn't go to jail or face any fines or anything like that.
Nothing.
But, weed, that's going to get you in a lot of trouble. All right, let's move on to other interesting substances. There is a poop bus in London. Yeah, a bus powered by poop. We've got a picture of it. I'll tell you a little bit more about it. It is a bus powered by biomethane gas, which is those people.
That bus is going to hit those people. That guy's going to lose his legs.
That's going to be a whole other story, which we will cover. The bus is powered by biomethane gas, which is generated through the treatment of human food and waste. And it made its maiden voyage in England this month. We've got a little bit more info for you. It seats 40 passengers and can travel up to 186 miles on one tank.
Oh, that's good shit.
Ding, ding, ding. Well done, Jimmy. The amount of gas it takes to produce one tank is how much is produced annually by 5 people. Do you have a joke about Mexican food or anything you want to get in there?
No.
You got nothing? Okay. Impurities are removed to create, quote, virtually odorless emissions. And when used to power vehicles, it can reduce greenhouse emissions by 88% compared to gasoline.
My father taught me how to read stories. Put the graphic back up there if you could real quick, just that last graphic there. There's only one word in that whole thing that matters. Virtually. Right?
Because virtually doesn't mean fully.
Virtually does not mean odorless.
Yes, their emissions are what they call silent but deadly.
I had that one right here. I was going to do that one. Poop bus. I mean, this is pretty good, right? We talk about the green stuff all the time. We're not talking about the weed this time. We're talking about green energy. Yeah. And we talk about global warming and climate change and all this stuff. But it seems to me this is not something that America will be able to wrap its brain around.
I mean, people are going to be looking at those buses now. It's going to create a log jam in traffic. That's what I think.
One more?
I don't know. Keep going.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seems to me like some effort to how can we make riding the bus a slightly less unpleasant experience. Slightly less, excuse me, let me try that again.
Yeah.
How can we make riding the bus a slightly less pleasant experience? You know who rides the bus, guys?
Old people.
Escaped mental patients, court-martialed GIs, the indigent, and the haunted.
That's it.
The Haunted, yeah. That's.
I thought The Haunted ride the subway.
See, I'm glad you laughed at that because that is Jay Leno on Letterman, like 1986.
Classic.
Yeah, when he was at his best. Dave, you know who rides the bus? Escape mental patients, court-martial GIs, the indigent, the haunted. And Letterman goes, the haunted? And Jay goes, the haunted.
That was the peak of Leno.
That was the peak of Leno.
People don't realize he was funny.
Yep.
Read into that what you want. That was the peak of Leno. You think we could ever do something like this in the United States? Obviously, we should be doing this kind of thing if it works.
I thought they were already powered by shit. Are you kidding me? They're not?
They're not.
Oh, I think, doesn't Willie Nelson have a bus that's powered by shit?
I think his bus is powered by weed. I was outside his tour bus once, and that thing reeked of weed.
Really?
Yeah, that's a serious weed bus. Really, you think we can do anything
he
with
did
this?
the Taco Bell commercials. Wasn't that powered? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't believe this stuff. I just don't yes, of course we should. 88%, I mean, again, if it eliminates our reliance, this make great sense. And obviously if it can work for a bus, it can work for a car.
Yeah,
that's right.
So you want smart people behind this and working on this, and to go back to maybe the first clip we did or whatever, an earlier clip here on the Rubin Report posted by Chuck Todd and dumb people running for the Senate and running for the House.
Yeah.
It's just inconceivable that there are enough American legislators, especially in a position of power now, who would advocate this, who would get behind it.
So
and by the way, maybe not the president either. I don't want to make it seem like Barack Obama would be like, oh no, let's devote our resources
to poop buses.
To stuff like this. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my final point on this. We can't even get behind the electric car, right? Like, we still have problems with the electric car. They're still fighting Tesla all over the country. So poop bus probably not going to happen here for a while. Are we agreed? If we can't get the electric one going, the poop one, that's going to...
I saw the ad, though, for some car. It gets 95 miles to gallon. 95. That's incredible. It says it right on the screen, 95 miles to gallon.
That's a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Jimmy, one more shit joke? Bring us home.
No, I wish they would no, I'm done.
Okay, so you guys might have seen this story. It was popping up all over the place on BuzzFeed and Business Insider, all over, about this guy that was given a speech and said he and his partner basically had invented something that was going to make the vagina smell like peaches. That was the story that was run all over the place, and then it sort of got pulled back a little bit. It turns out that he's just an investor in a company that this girl created, a probiotic that she called Sweet Peach. And this was to help girls, probiotics, it helps your digestive system, makes you generally healthier. And this guy who's an investor, he got a little ahead of himself and basically said it was gonna make your vagina smell like peaches. The media went bonkers with it. Peach vagina is very exciting. So it was making me think, and that's why I want to do this story. The vagina. I'm a thinker. The vagina. What's the deal with the vagina? No. So it's not going to make the thing smell like peach vaginas. But people were excited about it, and that's what I thought was interesting.
Well, it's good if you got to use the probiotics, right? Because I use it. That's what makes it smell like peaches.
You use the amateur
I
biotics?
use the amateur biotics. It smells like mackerel.
He's feeling it today. He's feeling it. Do you want your vaginas to smell like peaches, Ben? Again, this is not going to actually do that. I want to be very clear.
I would like to quote the woman who was left out of the article by the two douchebags who
ran with this
who ran with the story. Her name is Audrey Hutchinson, and she said, I love this quote, "It's nothing about scent. A vagina should smell like a vagina, and anyone who doesn't think that doesn't deserve to be near one." Right? So I like that. That was so then this guy Austin Hines, who was one of the two douchebags, again jackbags, he came and then he comes back. He goes, "Hey, look, I never said anything about making vaginas smell like peaches. The commercial product is not scented. The goal is to restore normal, healthy scent." He'd be okay there, right? Except he can't help himself. So he goes on. "The goal is to restore normal, healthy scent as a byproduct of being healthy and not having those infections." So again, he can't help but smell because he's still like, because vaginas smell and I don't want to be near one. And guys, am I right? High five, yeah, whatever.
All right, so again, I want to be very clear about this. Audrey Hutchinson invented this thing. It was never going to smell like peaches. That's just where the investors sort of went off the deep end with this thing. And the media loved it because it sounds like something. Vagina smelling peaches. So I want to ask you two, as straight men, you love the vagina. You're talking about it constantly. Would you want your wife's vagina to smell like a peach? Or another fruit? Is there a better fruit for you?
Well, I'll say this, that I have a book I was given it for my birthday. It was Lost Stories of the Bible. And one of the stories in there is when God comes down and he says to Adam, after he invented Eve, he goes, "Where's Eve?" She says, "Oh, she's taking a bath in the lagoon." He goes, "I'll never get that smell out of the fish." So this... It's a lost story of the Bible.
Is it really? Yeah.
I vaguely remember that one. You want your wife's vagina to smell like a fruit, or maybe I don't know, like a birthday cake,
I'm
or
going to say something controversial.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and I think I don't have any objection to it as is.
Yeah.
You know, it's lovely, it's a big turn on, and so forth. But I mean, if you could get mango,
sure. That's what I'm saying. Mango.
I mean, who wouldn't?
Hey,
you know,
you enjoy a chocolate cock? Am I
I
wrong?
agree. That's what I'm saying. If I could have a chocolate cock, that would be great. So yeah. I didn't mean to put this on you guys. I'm not trying to deflect here. I think that's the end of the show. Okay. What do you think? I think that's it. All right. I want to thank Jimmy Dore and Ben Mankiewicz for this Veterans Old Timers edition of the Rubin Report. Enjoy your turkey, and we will see you.
I'm going to go beat the fucking shit out of Ben right now.